This is Between Hook Sets. I'm Jason Walter from In Through the Outdoors with my partner in slime, Kurt Underhill from the Fishing Crew.
What's up, buddy?
Ooh. Boy, I'll tell you, I can't get my lighting right. It's driving me nuts.
It looks good,
I just never expected to have to worry about all of these things. I got into radio. We don't care what the lighting's like. Most of the time, we shut the lights off to the studio. You're in front of a microphone. You could talk to thousands of people all by yourself. And then we start doing this live stuff on Facebook and YouTube, and you got to have the lighting just right, and it's got to be just perfect, and it still isn't perfect, but I got to try to figure that out on my own.
You know, hey, we're just stumbling through it, but I think we're doing a good job at it, and we've been talking over the weeks, and we're quite a few shows into this, and I'm excited about tonight, man. I'm excited.
I am too. It's not very often that you go to the top. Yeah, because we always hear from the pro staffers. And Northland Tackle's got great pro staffers. They have got a long list of pro staffers that have been there, like Brian Brosdahl's been there forever. I couldn't even tell you what year he started, but I guarantee it was, back in the 1940s. Sorry, Brian. I'm just kidding you. I think I'm older than he is anyway. But no, they've got a great track record. We're going to find out tonight that things weren't so rosy with Northland Tackle. And then COVID came along and kind of changed things. And Gregg Wollner came along and it changed things for Northland Tackle. Yeah, so it's an impressive company. What was that?
So let's bring Gregg in. How you doing, Gregg?
Hi, Gregg.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, I tell you what, it's great to have you here. Thank you for taking time to sit down and chat with us. I know you got a million things going on in your world. You have more people after you than we have after us. And it's great that you're taking some time out to chat with the audience and give us the story of Northland Tackle. First, let's start by finding out about Gregg Wollner. It's interesting. You came from Rochester, and then you made your way into North Dakota and then into Minnesota. And I guess maybe even, spread your wings a little further than that. So start from the beginning a little bit.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Rochester, and my dad worked at the Mayo Clinic. I went to Iowa State to go to college. I am a 2.0 grade point average guy, right to the heart. And so I was never the smartest guy, or I certainly didn't like schoolwork. I graduated from college. I went to work for Target as a department manager in the stores back in 1987. But back in those days, if you were willing to work 80 hours a week, you could find your way moving up the totem pole. And that's what I did. And it was old school retail. And it got me an opportunity to be the store manager in Minot, North Dakota. I met Dennis Benzie, the store manager of the Shields, right next door to us. And I was like, man, if I got to work in retail, I might as well work in sporting goods. And so I worked my way over to a sporting goods store called Galleons. And I was vice president of hunting and fishing there. And then became the vice president at Rapala and worked my way all the way up to this opportunity at Northland. So it's been a great career. And it's been a lot of great stories along the way. Happy to share them with you.
Well, truly amazing. So talk a little bit about Rapala just for giggles. Tell us about your time there.
Yeah. Started there. I was hired by Tom Mack, and Tom Mack was the president then, and just a super dynamic, great guy. And I got hired as the vice president of product development, and Jarmo Rapala was my boss. And so Jarmo was in charge of product development for the lure factory in Finland. And he was tough. And he's only a few years older than me. But I worked for him for a couple of years, and he kind of taught me the ropes. And I learned about managing product development. And what I always tell people is there are great fishermen in this country, and there are great businessmen, but there's not very many really good business people who have fishing knowledge. That's one of the biggest things that's changing right now is as these college kids come up through the high school ranks and the college ranks, we're getting really good fishermen who've also got good business training, at least through the college programs. And then they're learning how to go out and be marketing agents in this new world, and they're doing it better than the old school. So
yeah, they grew up in the digital world. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're growing up in the digital world. It really does change things. So, for an old dog like me to learn new tricks, not such a simple thing. Plus, I have a face for radio. That doesn't help either.
Yeah.
So you said Rapala, and I'm glad you said Rapala because I
Yeah.
always correct people. I'm using the Rapalas. I'm like, no, it's Rapala.
Yeah.
And
Well, in the
who
north we say Rapala, and in the south they say Rapala.
they do. Okay. Well,
and-
and I don't remember who it was. Somebody, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but they said, as long as you buy the product, we don't care how you pronounce it.
I think that's always true.
Which makes a whole lot of sense. So you leave Rapala and you're on a non-compete, so you frankly can't go to work for anybody unless you want to go back to work for Target or something of that nature. And then
I didn't
COVID
know what I
comes along.
wanted to do. Yeah, it was 2019. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Fishing tackle, as much as it looks like fun from the outside, it's still work. I always tell everybody, they still have to pay you to go to work at Disneyland, and it's the same thing in the fishing world. It's still hard, so I took some time off, and it just so happened that in 2020 the COVID deal came along, and the owners of Northland are the former CEO and CFO from Pure Fishing. So Pat McIntyre and Kurt Jaden. Pat lives in California. He's the majority owner, and he said, hey, we need somebody to go up and run Northland because we can't travel during COVID. And so I went up there in February of 2020, and it was the prospects were bleak. Northland had been through a bankruptcy of Gander Mountain, and they lost a lot of money on that deal, didn't get paid for that. And then a big sporting goods distributor called Marie Sporting Goods went bankrupt, and that was our biggest customer, our biggest customer. So we didn't get paid for that. And then COVID came along. And at our darkest hour, it looked like it was going to be doomsday. And all of a sudden, everybody went fishing, and we had inventory, and Northland got back on its feet. And it kind of allowed us to transition. And we had to move from being bins of bulk jigs for $3 for $1 or $2 for $1 to making packaged jigs and making premium jigs. So when we started introducing Gamakatsu jigs and tungsten jigs and other things like that, it kind of elevated Northland's brand and brought us some new customers. And we still have, bulk jigs, but our business has been based on more premium products lately.
And it's kind of helping you get out of the lead business, because I know there's been a lot of controversy, especially in Minnesota, about lead and lead jigs and what it's doing to the loons and birds and such in lakes. So you're starting to make that transition, and it seems like the new jigs are really catching on. They're a little more pricey. Like you said, they're a premium jig.
Yeah.
But they are, frankly, they're amazing. I think you guys hit the nail on the head when you came out with the new jigs, and it's truly a great story. How do you guys decide what you're going to do with those type of products like that?
Well, to be honest with you, we don't make tungsten for the environmental reasons. That I consider that the side benefit. The bottom line is a tungsten jig is just better than lead. It's more sensitive. It's smaller. The molding process is so much better. You can make a better hook keeper on it. You could add more detail to it. But if you take a premium lead jig, they're about $2 a piece. A cheap jig is $1 a piece, maybe in lead. And then a tungsten jig is $3. So you're talking going from $2 to $3 from premium lead to premium tungsten. It's not a bridge too far. And it's just absolutely a better product. And so if you can buy a better product, there's a customer out there who says, hey, I only go once a year. I only go to Canada 1 week a year. If I spend an extra $75 on jigs, I'll consider it money well spent. And so that's kind of how we started going down that road. And we've already made, in 2024, Northland will have been in business for 50 years. We've already made every lead jig there is. Okay, there's no more lead jigs for us to make. So it's a good time for us to move on and we not getting rid of lead, but just add tungsten and some more premium products to our lineup.
Well, you've moved into the plastics a little bit more. This is Mike holding. I'm guessing it's the new eye candy. I can't quite
That's
tell.
right.
It's
It
kind
is
of halfway in the mouth there, but that eye candy thing has become pretty hot. Where I think you guys were even out, didn't you? Sold out, and now you've got some more supply, and the demand's been high for them. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, the TPE has been around for a long time. It's and Z-Man is really the latest people have made it famous. So Elastec is what they call their material. It existed 20 years ago. Terminator and Strike King people had it. And back when I was at Rapala, we had it in Terminator. It was called Snapback. And at Cabela's, it was called Recoil. And so the material existed 20 years ago, but at the time, if you would put it in your plastic tackle box, it would melt and it caused all kinds of problems. And people couldn't learn fast enough, that you had to rely on newspapers and print media and whatnot. And by the time the word was out of how to use it or treat it, people gave up and said, I'm going back to PVC. But when Z-Man brought it out and the material they improved the material dramatically. And now it is not as reactive, and it floats, and it's strong. And the new jigs are made to hold it. So it's a new style of jigs also are on the market. I feel like for finesse fishing, it's just plain better. And while Z-Man was out focused on the bass world, and we had the opportunity to go manufacture that and bring it to the walleye world, and if we're not the first, we're one of the first to really make a full scale push into walleye lures. And that's why we called it eye candy, just to say, hey, we're going to make shapes for walleye fishing and we're going to make colors for walleye fishing. We're not going to try to be something that we're not. And we dropped it last summer just to see how it would go. It blew out. And so we'll have a bunch of it starting in January of next year.
Well, I think you guys, you hit it, because all of that inventory got sold out. There are so many guys that I'm sure they're like me. You look at, and Kurt, you got to agree with me. When you go to, I don't care if it's Cabela's, you go to Shields, you go to wherever you go to Runnings, and it's bass stuff everywhere you look. And it's like, what happened to the walleye aisle? Where's all the stuff for walleye? And then all of a sudden Northland comes along, and here's this great big long yellow aisle of awesome walleye stuff, and it's been very refreshing.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that walleye fishing is in a real resurgence right now, and it's hard to. First off, I think we're the biggest walleye lure company. There are people like Rapala and Berkeley that make walleye lures too, whether it's soft plastics or shad wraps or whatever. But when it comes to walleye fishing, we make hard baits, balsa hard baits. We make soft plastics. We make jigs, obviously. We make walleye rigs. We make bobbers. And so we're all encompassing walleye fishing. And we can feel this resurgence in it. And people ask me where it's coming from. And I would say, without making light of it, I'd say all these high school kids that are on their high school team and learned how to use forward-facing sonar, and we're up in there catching bass or walleyes on bass lures, came back and said, my gosh, these walleyes are delicious. And they're the hero. They're the hero on date night when they bring home walleyes for dinner. And it's like, this is really fun. And forward-facing sonar and these new products have gotten us away from kind of just back trolling a Lindy rig or, back trolling a spinner rig or something like that, or trolling lead core. And it's kind of more suited to young people who want to learn to use the electronics and really use the electronics to go and win at the game.
Well,
and so there's a resurgence.
We're seeing a big change in how people are fishing and, running tournaments, watching these guys that are out there. You don't hear people pulling bottom bouncers very regularly. They're forward facing sonar. They're jig wrapping. They're pulling, pitch and swim baits and stuff at these fish. They are truly doing the bottom or the bass fishing style towards walleyes now, and it's working. And so you see the resurgence, and it's great to hear your company following, following that trend of let's get into these soft plastics and, improve on them and make them better.
Yeah, I used to fish Lake Erie quite a bit when I lived in Indianapolis. And I talked to John Hoyer when I was flying back from ICAST last summer, and he was telling me about they were getting ready for the championship and going out to Lake Erie, and he was going to use a swim bait and a jig rod. And I was like, you take a jig rod to Lake Erie, you're going to get your butt kicked. But
he did some butt kicking.
He did just fine. And it just goes to show you how much that changed. I mean, we never would have thought about that. That was a trolling suspended bait with suspended walleyes all the time, 15, 20 years ago. But the game has changed, and forward-facing sonar is making it easier to find fish in places we never knew they were. We didn't know walleyes were in 7 feet of water all year long. We didn't know they lived in the weeds. And it allows us to stay off those shallow fish with forward-facing sonar, and you can pitch a jig up to them. And that's just a totally different game. So the sport changed.
When I was a kid, Grandpa always said, okay, the walleyes are in the sand, so we're going to go find the sand. Yeah. And the green box came along, and that kind of helped us with depth. But you're looking for sand, and then everything we did was tied really tiny. Oh, you can't use a big hook. You can't use a big jig. Oh, you got to use an 1/8 ounce, a 16th ounce. The smaller, the better. And now, we've got guys like the Dwayne Jelm, and Drake Hurd, and those guys that are using these swim baits that are 6, 7, 8 inches long.
Yeah, a 3/4 ounce jig.
Yeah, right. It just goes to prove that we've been missing out on walleye because we just didn't know where they lived all the time, because we thought they were on the bottom. We thought they were in the sand or in the rocks, and they are absolutely everywhere in the lake. And that's kind of exciting.
I think it's true of everything. In fact, tonight we have Jeff Gustafson, our Bassmaster Classic champion pro staffer, here in town, and we're working on some different new products and just talking about next year. And John Peterson, one of our founders, who's like 75 years old, and they are best friends, and they're sitting at the same table, and John Peterson likes to fish a wacky rig, and he likes to watch it slowly fall down to the bottom to catch the fish. And Gussie's over there like, no, I use a 3/8 ounce jig, and I want it to fall exactly down to the bottom as fast as it can get there. And it's just that's just one generation removed, basically. But they fish totally differently, even though they are both super successful. So
I grew up vertical jig and black lipstick jigs.
Yeah,
I mean that was the number one thing. And I remember when they quit making black lipstick jigs, and they went to the Chartreuse, and my dad about had a meltdown. We bought everything we could ever find, and then they came with a black and white head, and they weren't the same, So bring back the black lipstick jig.
We're gonna have a surprise for you next year.
Oh, it's all black with the skirt, because
it's gonna be a tungsten lipstick jig.
Really?
Yeah.
So I grew up vertical jigging black lipstick jigs. That's all we ever did.
Well, that's another thing. We didn't sell any black walleye jigs around here until Tom Wynn came along last year and said, no, I want black tungsten jigs. And we're like, are you kidding me? But that's about all he uses. He uses a tiny 1/8 ounce or 16th ounce jig, small soft plastics typically. And he's just a real finesse fisherman, and he wants the jig head to be invisible, basically.
Yeah, I love his concept there with the black. When I was a kid, a lot of guys were just using lead heads. There was no paint on them whatsoever.
Yeah.
You just had the unpainted jig, and
I
always thought they needed to be painted. I really did, but what do I know? I was using a Zebco, but I grew up fishing Devil's Lake. So 2-pound perch and some really nice walleye. I mean, it was a great lake to grow up on. But the things have really changed from the 80s to today. And I swear in the storeroom, I swear I've got an old package of lipstick jigs. I'd love to go get it because I think I've got it. But regardless, it's great to know that it's coming back. You mentioned Gussie, and I want to do this. I want to show pictures here before before we get past the big party, because this was big for Gussie, but this was big for Northland Tackle. You guys had an absolute blast here, and Gussie has become one of your big sign-ons. I mean,
Yeah.
he's beyond pro staff.
So one of the, John Peterson is, I would say, almost the godfather of bass fishing in Minnesota. He and Al Linder and a few guys started that back in the 90s of trying to make bass tackle in Minnesota. But we were so walleye focused as a state, it just never really worked. There weren't a lot of bass lure companies up here and it didn't take. But John Peterson, Jeff Gustafson, when he was 14 years old, fished with John Peterson, and John first gave him his first sponsorship and said, "Here, you can be a Northland pro staffer. You're on." And those two have had now a 30-year, 25-year relationship together that's just been fantastic. They fish together. They talk to each other all the time. Gussie is best friends with Jimmy Linder. He's friends with all these people down in this area, and they're really in touch with Minnesota bass fishing. And if you remember, Northland has tried bass lures a few times with Slurpees, soft plastics, and they did a bunch of different tube head jigs and different things over the years. Well, I think the biggest thing we're going to do is we're going to bring Northland into the bass game. And we signed Gussie to a 3-year title sponsorship. So we will have Northland on his boat and his jersey. And then we bought the lure that he used in the Classic called the Smeltinator jig. And we bought that from his best friend. And it'll be a Northland Smeltinator jig starting now.
Nice.
And so that will start shipping in December. So on the back of the package is this picture of Brian Gustafson, who made that jig with the help of John Peterson, and Jeff Gustafson, not related, who won the Bassmaster Classic with it. And now 30 years later, they're all in together on this venture. And it's a wonderful story.
It is.
And everybody is going to benefit from this, whether it's Jeff or Brian or John, the other people that work with him. So it's going to be a great launch for us next year. And that will kind of start moving us towards bass fishing, because in Minnesota, the growth is in bass fishing, the participation growth.
There are way more bass fishermen than there are walleye fishermen by leaps and bounds. I guess it's probably exponential if we did the math on it. But you talk about it being good for Gussie or for Brian or for Northland Tackle. It's good for us.
Yeah.
For the regular average, buying Northland Tackle hoodies.
Yeah.
And yes, I had to wear it tonight. I thought, well,
thank you.
What better time to wear it than when you got the boss on? So it's a big deal to us because we're looking for stuff that's successful. And Gussie right now is one of the hot things. Winning the Classic was a huge deal for us up here in the upper Midwest, whether we're from North Dakota, South Dakota, or Minnesota, because he's our homeboy. I mean, that's right. Just the way it is, and so now he's tied to Northland Tackle, and it's a big thing for consumers.
Yeah. Well, people don't understand what a thrill it is for a little tiny Northland fishing tackle to have the Bassmaster Classic champion. Yeah, I mean,
hang on. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal there. It's really neat to see. I guess for me, I was super excited, and I'm not tied to any of it. I just thought it was amazing.
It is amazing. And, he's the perfect fit for us because he uses a jig and we make jigs, and it's been John Peterson. He's been around this company his whole life. And so to pull all that together is really just a great opportunity for us. And he is really kind of our hometown hero. If we would have signed a Bassmaster Classic champ at Defoe, who's great, it just isn't going to matter that much to Northland. But Gussie, between northern United States and Canada, it's right in our wheelhouse. It's just it's a great relationship, and he's such a good person, so well respected, well liked, simple. I mean,
right. I was going to say, you can't find a better guy than Gussie.
No, and you guys should see, he came to our meeting today. And we said, okay, bring down your product ideas or whatever you use so we can talk about it. It came down in a little tiny bag about this big. He goes, we talk about jigs. He's like, I only use these 3 colors in 3/8, 3/0. That's it.
Wow.
You're like, well, we're going to need more than that. We're going to find something else. We got to find something for you to sell. But he's like so efficient, and he knows what he's going to use, and he's going to use that Z-Man jerk shad. He's going to use a Smeltnator jig, and these are the colors he's going to use, and it is about that simple. And that technique, he's going to win at that technique everywhere he goes. He's just better at it than most people.
Yeah, that's good.
And
Years using it.
Yeah. The other thing that's kind of interesting is here he is winning bass tournaments with what we would consider kind of a walleye technique, right? Vertically jigging a 90-degree hook jig. And then at the same time, the walleye guys are out there pitching jigs up into 4 feet of water the way that bass guys have been doing it for a long time. So it's amazing how the two sports are converging together right now and using, for the first time, using some pretty similar techniques. And up until now, in walleye fishing, we just haven't had these trends. Walleye fishing hasn't had the luxury of the frogs, or there's Dennis Benzie, my friend from Bismarck. Walleye fishing hasn't had the benefit of like a frog craze or a Cinco or a fluke or creature baits or something like that. It has been pretty stagnant with a 1/4 ounce jig and a minnow, and a Lindy rig and a leech.
Yeah.
And so now with this new energy and new customers coming in, there's new techniques and new products, and it's when you walk into a store, you start to see new things in walleye fishing they've never seen before.
Well, yeah, you look at the aisle. When you walk in, the Northland aisle was, as you said before we went on the show, it was yellow bins.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it. There were a few other things.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, you maybe had 6-8 feet of the aisle. Now you've expanded. Now it's more like 12, 15 feet. You get into the bass world, and you're going to, I shouldn't say that, because you walk into Shields, and Northland tackle it's spread out. If it's a 12-foot, 15-foot, 20-foot rack, or a wall, it's full of Northland tackle stuff. You guys have done great in the ice fishing industry. That's come leaps and bounds in just the last few years on its own. And of course, we're going into ice season here. And I got to see the new 2024 catalog at Aglow in Bemidji. And boy, I'll tell you what, there's Dick Meyer. Look at that. Craig, how you doing?
He's the best.
You know what he is? I met him last year, and I can't wait to fish with him. He said he wanted to fish with me. I don't know why, but because I think he thinks I can take him to where the fish are, and I can. I found some fish, so Craig, we'll have to talk.
You'll take both of us.
You've got a whole bunch of new colors. You've got a bunch of new items coming out, and I can't wait till they start putting this ice fishing stuff out, because we're going to spend some money again.
Well, the good news is I think it's all set at Shields. So I think Shields has it all set. I was at the Eden Prairie store this week, and it's in full force. They're ready for you. So, and I think Cabela's is probably set as well. So it's coming on already. And the sales, I think, are a little slow to get started this year, because it's been kind of a nice fall for everybody to go out and fish. There's been a lot of open water fishing. And but when it comes, once it gets cold, it's going to be bonkers out there. And there's going to be great deals, because there's a lot of carryover big ticket stuff from augers and houses and whatnot. And then there's a lot of new lures. I mean, lures are still the part that people love to go buy, because they think this one might be magic. And all the Northland ones are. So they are all magic.
Hey, I've caught more. My go-to confidence ice fishing jig is a buckshot.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can throw everything on, and I'm not catching fish. I put a Northland buckshot jig on. That is my go-to lure. I mean, that is what I put down every time I'm out.
It's another interesting story. I'll tell you guys that for years, Northland was so committed to the northern part of Minnesota, Canada, that we kind of have had a dominant position in spoons. And that's what everybody uses up north. They use spoons for crappies and perch and everything else. Well, when you get down to the Twin Cities, we use like a little size 12 tungsten jig, and nobody would even know what to do with that in Bemidji. They wouldn't even know how to fish something that small. And so I think just in the last couple of years, branching out and having great new partners, especially Shields, because I saw Dennis on there, to help bring us some of our new products and get us into new markets with panfish lures and some other places. A real hot deal right now is lake trout fishing and big predator tubes. That business is just booming everywhere across the northern part of the country in Canada.
You say that we talk with spoons, guys, jig wraps have been the thing out here in South Dakota for the last few years, and guys are talking the next thing is going to be spoons. Yeah. Guys are starting to throw spoons, ripping spoons, just like they're pulling a jig and wrap, ripping a jig and wrap. So it's really interesting to see that. And I mean,
I just had a pro staff guy tell me that works on Devil's Lake, by the way, on the weed edges, throwing little ice fishing spoons, flutter spoons on weed edges. And I was like, I've never heard of that before. But that literally, I heard that this week.
It sure makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It really does. And I suppose we're probably learning some of that from forward-facing sonar. We're getting a look at what's going on under the water there along those weed edges, because I think guys are fishing weed edges more in the last, let's say, year and a half, 2 years than they have. You got your diehards that believed in weeds no matter what. But now your regular average guy is going out with this at least side imaging. Yeah. And they're finding the weeds, and they're finding out that the walleye are hiding there. And then you put a flutter spoon into the mix, and it becomes deadly.
Yeah, well, I think the new sonar is allowing you to stay off those fish. We were conditioned for 10 years ago to have to be right on top of them and vertically jig for them. And now if you can stay off of them and they're up in 5 or 6 feet of water, you can pitch to them and you can cast to those fish and catch them, versus when you would drive your boat up to go try and fish over the top of them, you'd spook them, right? So all those new techniques that are coming up are where the crossover is with bass fishing. And Gussie's here today talking about these 5-inch, 6-inch spoons he uses. And I said, wow, it's an ounce and a half long, just a big flutter spoon, Nichols flutter spoon. And he says, yeah, that's what I use for smallmouth. And you're like, man, that's a giant bait. And he said, and they eat it. They eat it. So, so here I got a walleye guy here on Monday telling me he's using a spoon, and a bass guy here on Wednesday telling me he's using a spoon. It's amazing how much crossover is in these two sports right now.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's fantastic. You guys have great pro staff, and the cool thing, Northland Tackle's really become a multi-species product. Here you've got here's Craig Dickmeyer and Donnie Obert. Now these two are like brothers from another mother.
Yeah,
they are just way too much fun. And I've got some of the other. Here's Sarah with the pitching puppet, and I think that pitching puppet is going to be great for ice fishing this year too.
Well, we'll have to ask Dennis Benzie. I sent him the first ones I had when I got them this summer. So
okay,
but everybody wants to be in that glide bait business. So I was at Rapala. I think we made like 3 or 4 different versions of that, from a flat wrap to a snap wrap to some other wrap. Nothing could beat a jig and wrap. No matter what we did, everybody's like, yeah, I just want the jig and wrap. And everybody is still trying to find that magic there, because, a jig and wrap still is just incredibly effective. But everybody's trying to figure out, well, what else could I do? Because that technique is so good almost all year long now that you almost have to have one tied in every day. And so you get a lot of new cosmetics, a lot of new hook configurations, people making them stronger, this and that and everything else. There's 10 versions of them out there. And so we've always had the puppet minnow, which is really a little bit more of a vertical jig.
Right.
And then the pitching puppet, one thing I didn't tell you guys, Jarmo Rapala ended up he's worked for us as a lure designer. So the guy who hired me at Rapala left Rapala. He bought Bagley, and we bought Bagley from him, and he is our lure designer. And so he came up with that pitching puppet idea. And it's got some unique designs. I don't go into all the details there, but He's like, I can make one better than a jig and wrap. And I said, trust me, I've already heard that 100 times. All right. But let's try yours and see what happens. And I think it is a cool bait. It's a little bit different design. So I'm excited to get out and try it next summer.
I've got one guy that fishes my stuff that begs for a purple chrome. So I think purple chrome on Hawaii would be pretty hot. So just putting that out there if you're looking for some colors.
Coming.
It's coming. You'll be happy to hear that, Caden. Pay attention.
Purple, purple, purple. I heard of that all this week. We were up here doing these product development meetings. So
yeah, there is something about purple, and walleye see colors different than we think they do. A lot of they see the pinks and the teals and the whites, and if the tritanope thing as a human holds true, that purple actually is like it's a muddy brown, muddy gray.
Yeah.
I don't understand what it is that turns walleye on, but the purple descent it's rock fishing time right now. I'm out on the rocks where Kurt's dad, Dave, taught me how to fish for big walleye in the very end of September into October, and it's working great. And I've always got a purple descent tied on, and it's always one of those hot ones. It's crazy. Oh, look at that. The crappie in the picture caught on the puppet minnows. Fantastic. So
Stickmeyer is one of the greatest crappie jig fishermen I know. So he can catch them on a stick if I can get a hook on it. So he's pretty good.
Well,
Donnie Obert isn't bad either, by the way.
He can catch walleye. Woo.
Yeah.
That boy can catch walleye. I've got a few other pictures here I just want to pop up real quick. Of course, the tungsten. Now, one question here, because this is a great close up. The I is a T. So is it T for tungsten or is it T for Tom Wynn?
No. We call him the franchise around the office, but the T was for tungsten. We put the red eye on there because we thought people would have a hard time remembering which one, whether it was an eighth or a quarter ounce. We had to at least say that this is tungsten, and it would look different than lead. And that's the reason we'd use that red eye. Eventually you don't need it, but eventually everybody will learn. But for the first ones, we need to make it so it could be distinguished a little bit better.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. I did. I thought it was amazing. We can't do Northland tackle without showing Bro. He, of course, loves his panfish and the crappie and the bluegill and
there's purple
the
right there
as well.
Purple right there.
It's been an absolute awesome opportunity to just sit and watch you guys and watch what you've done over the last couple of years. It really has changed, and maybe the regular average person hasn't noticed it.
Yeah.
I pay attention a little bit more. Kurt, you obviously pay attention a little bit more, and it has been truly amazing. And now you expand into Canada, and that's a big, huge deal too. So tell us a little bit about this expansion into Canada.
Well, we've always sold things in Canada, but we've hired a new rep group up there called Can-Am Sports, and we want to get a better penetration in Canada. It's just we make every single thing they need in Canada. Canada, I think, is a little bit underserved. So we really make it a push to make the products they need in Canada, bring some of these new techniques up there. The Canadians consume all of our media. We spend a lot of time building content for social media and whatnot with Charlie and Jace Peterson, Sam, and those guys. And we see how much of that the Canadians consume, but they don't always have access to our products. Pain in the butt to have to buy it from a U.S. company and then ship it across the border and pay taxes, and it takes a long time to ship it. So we want to get more products listed up there, make it easier to get it. And the first step of that was buying Smeltinator, which is the dominant jig in all of Canada. And now we've got Jeff Gustafson, and now we've got a rep group, and we'll make a bigger penetration up there too.
Wow. It is truly amazing and super successful. I'm glad, really, I think, wouldn't you say COVID came along at the right time to help Northland tackle with its resurgence?
As horrible as that disease is, I don't ever want to minimize it. But the bottom line is it gave a company like us a second chance at a time when it was really tough. And, we were the beneficiary of PPP loans. When I first got up there, we didn't have any employees. We had no employees working. We were just trying to keep our management there so that we didn't have to close or whatever. We were just, holding on for dear life for February, March, April, and about May, it turned around and people started buying online, and they could go into Walmart stores and they could go into some of the general merchandise stores, and they started buying products, and eventually we could start shipping again. And then that made it all better.
Hey, Johnny.
So, Johnny Candle.
Yeah, he's getting ready to go to Florida. Lucky dog.
I can't believe he's not already down there.
Yeah. Well, it's been too nice.
Yeah.
He I think, if I remember right, he said 99 days in a row they caught limits of walleye on Devil's Lake. It was an amazing year up there.
Yeah,
truly amazing.
I can't even believe it. I lived in when I lived in Minot, it was like 1996 or 97, and I remember Dennis Benzie fished over there with Gary Roach one day, and it was like the Dead Sea. I mean, literally, it was like, maybe that was earlier than that. Maybe that was more like 92. And it was kind of an alkali lake. There was nothing there. It was just brutal. And, now I come back and the guys had their tournament up there this year, and it's limits of 6-pounders. And it's just absolutely crazy what that fishery is producing. And that's really a gem. That's just crazy. 91, Dennis said. Yeah, 1991. And I still remember that because my wife was, grew up in Rugby right there. And I was like, well, we're never going to go fish there. Dennis and I went down to Sakakawea or Audubon or whatever instead. But it's amazing how that has changed. And
it really has. Zebok Pass was just this teeny tiny little area that you made your way through. And Graham's Island, you got in there through a different road. Things are so different. I'd not fished it since 1984. So when we fished it just after or during the NWT championship, I was absolutely blown away having gone onto the water from Graham's Island, because that's where we used to get on before, and it was in a totally different area.
Yeah.
But then we went around the corner to Zebok, and it blew my mind. It was unbelievable. But there again, we didn't even leave Graham's Island, and we caught a ton of fish, and it was a lot of fun. It's a great lake.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And it's just how far walleye fishing has come. It is just unbelievable that you can have a fishery, inland fishery in the Dakotas, that you can catch big fish like that unbelievably consistently. At least guys like Dennis and Johnny can.
Well, I don't. And if Dennis or Johnny, if you remember, when I was a kid, the big thing was 2-pound perch on Devil's Lake, but we never measured them. I don't know if they were 13 inches, if they were 14, 15 inches. Guys, did you ever measure them back in the 80s, or early 90s? Those 2-pound perch, because people say, well, how long were they? I have no idea. We just know that they weighed 2 pounds or more. They were massive, and it was so much fun. It was a total blast. But the fishery's still hanging on to those big perch. It'll be fun to go there this winter. Brad Durick, I'm kind of talking him into spending a little time walleye fishing and perch fishing, get him away from catfish. But it's been great to have you on. I see we're running at about 45 minutes, and you've got guests at the house. Didn't mean to keep you this long, but we are walleye. Yeah, isn't that the truth?
We sure are.
It's been great to have Dennis. Thank you, Johnny, Craig. Thank you very much for commenting and being a part of the show here too. It's neat to have you guys a part of it. Gregg, absolutely the most fun night we've had all summer long here. It's great to go all the way to the tippy top and have the boss on and find out what's going on, and to have you be open-minded and casual, not keep a secret, and I think that's awesome. Okay, so they were 14 to 15 inches. All right, well, they were massive. Thanks, Johnny. Have a safe trip to Florida. So great to have you on. Of course, my best to JC. It's great that you're a part of the rugby family. An amazing place to grow up, as I'm sure JC has told you. It's wonderful. Minot was a great town. Loved it. They had a great Chinese restaurant there that I never wanted to eat Chinese at. And then later in life, I learned I love Chinese. And
fortune cookie.
Yes, the fortune cookie. Right on. Yeah.
I think, Jason, I think with all the rugby people that have been on this show, I think we're going to have to change the show to rugby.
Yeah, it is truly amazing.
I mean, we've only been doing this since like May, and we've had a lot of connections to Rugby, North Dakota.
Yeah, isn't that nuts? It is crazy. It all comes back to rugby, and it's so much fun. Tom Wynn, it's great to know that you were here watching the show too. Great to have you. It's great that he's such a nice guy. You run into him at the National Walleye Tour, and he'll chat with you. All the guys are. I think that's the one thing that's a little bit different from bass to walleye. The bass guys are very talkative, and they'll tell you what they were using. And the walleye guys are a little more secretive. But I think the walleye guys are also figuring out that you got to chit chat with the consumer, and you got to make them happy. And guys like Tom and Dewey, those guys are reaching out and talking to consumers and telling them the truth and giving them that extra hand and that knowledge to go out and catch fish and more fish for themselves.
Yeah, Tom Wynn is like a walleye savant. And one of the things about him is he answers virtually I think not virtually. I think he answers every single text message question on social media. He can't get to them all every minute, but he is the most available and responsive person for somebody that has all that knowledge and he's willing to share it. He's just phenomenal.
Oh, you know what? One more quick note here before we leave. Will Pappan ran into Will at the Bemidji bait shop, and I kind of looked at him like, "Are you Will Pappenfuss's doppelganger?" He goes, "What are you talking about?" And well, you look a lot like Will Pappenfuss. He goes, "I am Will Pappenfuss."
Yeah.
And so I had he and I talked on the phone today, and I said, "Okay, honestly, I'm sorry. I know it was a little odd, but I have seen you out in the public. You've got your shades on, you got your hat on, you got your jersey on, and you are a ball of fire and a card, having fun telling jokes. And when I came into the bait shop, you didn't have sunglasses on, you didn't have a jersey on, you didn't have a hat on, and you were as quiet as a church mouse."
Yeah.
So,
he's like the MVP up here at the Bemidji office, because you can call him up and say, "Hey, I need to get a crappie video. Can we go?" And he's like, 10 minutes from here. Let's go right now. And or I need to get one big walleye. No problem. We got to go right now. 20 minutes over here. And so he's like the MVP content guy, because we can always count on him to get us on a body of water and get a video when we need it, or a new bait or whatever it's going to be. So he was in this week too and had a lot of good things to say. So,
well, it's exciting because he's going to be in Sioux Falls at the Ice Institute November 10th, 11th, and 12th, and he's going to do seminars. First time he's done that in Sioux Falls. So super excited about that. And I think Brad Hawthorne is going to be there. Trying to remember who else is. Brian Brosdahl is going to be there again. So Brian and Heather are going to be there. And then I think there's some others like Jason Durham. He's fantastic too. Great school teacher too. They're all going to be there. So looking forward to it. It's not the first ice show of the season. It'll be the first big one of the season. But I think we've got Blaine in is it?
Blaine's after.
Yeah, Blaine is October 28th, 29th, is it? There's an early, at the Alliance Center.
Is that the Wisconsin one? Is there a Wisconsin one?
No, it's the north of the cities there. I can't remember. It's on the tip of my tongue, and I'm just absolutely blowing it. But
not the Blaine Sports Center.
No, that one's in.
It's the Adrenaline Center. The Rogers Adrenaline Center in Rogers, maybe. I'll have to look it up and share the information. But anyway, we got a bunch of ice shows coming up, and it's going to be a blast. So, Greg, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Have an absolutely wonderful evening. Have a great winter. And, maybe we'll see you on the ice somewhere. Who knows?
Let's do it. Call me anytime, guys.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Greg, thanks for your time, buddy.
Greg, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. That is way too much fun. Gregg Wollner from Northland Fishing Tackle. That was a lot of fun. I really had a good time, Kurt.
That was a blast.
All right. Well, you have an absolutely wonderful night yourself. And folks, thanks for listening. This is Between Hook Sets. I'm Jason Walter from In Through the Outdoors with my partner in slime, Kurt Underhill from the Fishing Crew.